Yogesh, thanks for joining us on Masterclasses all the way from, is it in Istanbul that you are at the moment?
It is, yes, thank you.
And, it does seem when we look at your life story that you are very well qualified to talk about this practice because you've been doing it since you were so young. Looking back, what do you think it was like for you growing up as someone who was learning meditation and practicing meditation when so many of your peers were off doing other things? How do you think that was for you during that time?
Yeah, I think since a very young age, I've always enjoyed being quiet. I was a quiet child and I didn't need much to entertain me. So being quiet and coming into meditation seemed quite natural to me. And I was always interested in thinking deeply and trying to understand why people behave the way they behave. So why people get angry, why people have fear and so on. So as well as sort of going to school and, being with peers and taking part in school activities, there was this other channel which was also running for me in terms of, understanding the self, learning to keep the mind peaceful, learning to stay happy. And because I was surrounded by some highly mature spiritual people at the meditation center, these ideas rubbed off on me even more. And it became quite clear to me that each person in a way has two lives. There is our outer life of our work and study and travel and so on. But then there's also the inner world of the thoughts and the emotions. So growing up, I was very aware that this inner world requires at least as much attention as the outer world. And it helped me to know myself better. Because as you know, as a kid, one of the things that you're trying to do is to find your identity. Who am I in this world and how do I fit in? And also, especially in the late teens, there's a very powerful competitive vibe where people are competing with each other, trying to show themselves to be better than each other and trying to prove themselves. So I saw that happening and I felt because I had this meditation background, I was able to sort of navigate through that atmosphere of competition and just try to keep my own self-respect and peace of mind.
I think for some children who are more sensitive and feel things more and pick up energies in the environment, perhaps more than other children, growing up in the world as it is now can be really tough. In many ways it's the school of hard knocks, and that sort of soft, gentle spiritual side is something that can easily get crushed and sort of pushed to the margins because it doesn't seem to be validated by society out there. What do you think, looking back now, you did to really nurture that innate interest that you had and that ability that you were developing? How did you keep that precious experience safe from those outside influences?
Yeah. Well, again, I took a lot of help and inspiration from my teachers and my colleagues in the center. And pretty much all of them were older than me. And so they were guiding me and helping me with their own life experiences. But there's one analogy I heard, which I liked very much. And somebody had said, make your personality like a diamond. And I asked them, what do you mean by that? And she said that, well, on the one hand, a diamond is very beautiful, something very nice to look at. It's a wonder of nature. And any person who sees that would think, what an amazing thing nature has produced. But on the other hand, a diamond, of course, is a very, very strong, very tough substance. And so I became aware that spirituality doesn't mean just to be Mr. Nice Guy and to be gentle and soft and so on. That's one part of it. But the other part of it was developing my self-respect, my inner strength, so that, my peace and happiness should remain in my own hands. So certainly challenges were there, and I often messed up as well. But being aware of this, that my inner world is my choice and my responsibility, working on that awareness helped me to nourish and protect, my inner spirituality, whilst at the same time being able to be nice, to try and be helpful and to be positive with the people around me.
For a lot of people, they go through quite a journey to discover their life purpose. What are they going to do with their life? You could call that soul purpose. And it seems for you that quite early on you decided that your life journey was going to be the spiritual journey. You were going to make that into, really, that's pretty much the main and only thing that you have done throughout your adult life. What is it about that spiritual journey that made you decide to really devote your entire energy to that?
Yeah, actually my own sort of moment when it became clear to me what was important was, you may remember in the mid-80s there was something called Live Aid and Band Aid. There were lots of money was being raised for Africa. And of course it was in the news all the time in the UK. And so I also used to have the thought, what can I do to help? And I was maybe 15 years old at that time. And one of the thoughts that came to my mind was that I want to help to make a difference, but I don't want to work on the symptoms of what seems to be the problem in the world. I want to get to the root and work on that. And through my spiritual studies and what I was learning at the center, it became clear to me that the root cause of all the crises that we have are within consciousness, the human consciousness, when it's let's say disease with ego or selfishness or anger. The behavior which comes from that has created the global scenario where we have so many problems. And I felt that I wanted to live a life of response to the world condition. But how to do it? And when I understood the spiritual knowledge more, it became clear to me that first, of course, I have to work on my own self in overcoming these things like ego and anger. And of course, it's a work in progress. But then also to help to be part of an education so I could share that knowledge and experience with others. And so fairly early on, these thoughts were shaping my sense of purpose in my life, that how could I be useful? How could I live a meaningful life at this time that the world is in?
So we're talking about spiritual stamina and sustaining ourselves spiritually. How do you define a spiritual life? What does that look like for you? And why is it something that needs sustaining?
Well, the way I see it, it's like, we all have 3 levels on which we operate. So if you can imagine 3 concentric circles, and the very middle circle is what we may call as being. And the circle around that is the realm of doing. And then the circle around that is the realm of having. And generally, I think most people, they spend their whole lives in the doing and the having realm. Their mind is occupied with what they have to do, their duties, their responsibilities, possessions, roles, relationships, etc. And I think for me, spirituality means living from that being part, being very aware of my spiritual identity. And as you know, we call that the soul identity. I am the soul, I am the spirit. So being in that awareness as you go through day-to-day life. Now, why it's a challenge and why it needs to be sustained is because the world that we're in largely is going in the opposite direction. And just by being in the world, by going to work and the traffic and the shopping malls, it pulls you out of that being part. And therefore it takes conscious effort and discipline to come back to that being part and live in that. And so for me, making meditation, for example, into a lifestyle is essential in order to keep reminding myself, live from the being part, the inside out living, rather than what we term as the outside-in lifestyle.
So we're saying very much that the tools of the meditator really, well, the main tool is the mind, and the language, the vocabulary of the mind is thinking. So the subject that you're engaged in studying and practicing really is the subject of becoming the observer of your thoughts, seeing the effect of different thoughts on you, and observing how that affects your spiritual power. So I'm wondering if you could just talk us through how you understand spiritual power, what it is, and how do we expend that spiritual energy, and how do we conserve that spiritual energy, and what are the powers at our disposal if we're looking at spiritual practice?
Yeah. Well, it's like one way to measure your spiritual power is how you deal with life, how you handle criticism and praise, being the center of attention, being ignored, success and failure, all of that. Because life and relationships is the mirror in which your character is visible to you. And so one of the things that we study in this practice is what we call as the powers of yoga, or the powers of a mind that really is becoming spiritually stable, strong and secure. So I could maybe just run through some of these different powers that we look at. And they're all very practical, to do with practical life. And so one of them is like this ability or the power to withdraw yourself, withdraw your mind. And it's rather like a tortoise which is able to withdraw its limbs into its shell as and when it needs to. And so the power to withdraw is like you withdraw your thoughts away from a situation. You withdraw your feelings and you become very silent inside, not being affected, not being provoked by what's happening around you. In other words, it's a bit like being able to just own your peace and own your happiness at any moment. And I think especially in big city life, where there is so much noise and so many people and so much traffic, it's really essential to be able to withdraw as and when you want and take care of your energy levels. And then following on from that is something we call as the power to pack up. And for me, what that also means is just being able to apply a full stop to your thoughts with regard to any particular situation. You can just adjust yourself to any situation without being impacted by it. It's like just the ability to, like a duck, like water off a duck's back. And so that's also a power, not to hold anything negative inside you, but just to keep flowing, just to keep moving along. And the next one that follows along is the ability to discern. And this is, of course, an essential human ability, especially in a world full of so much choice, for your intellect to be able to be still and not to be taken hostage by your emotions, and to have the clarity of thought that what is the right thing for me to do in a situation, even when others around me may be panicking or stressing, not to absorb the stress of others, but to keep a stable intellect, a clear head, and to be able to assess the situation clearly, and even to be free from the influence of my own prejudices. Because external influence is one thing, but internal influence is also something else. One's fears, one's prejudices, one's biases, to discern when that voice is coming to try and influence the way I see things. And so spiritual power is needed to keep myself free from all those influences. And what follows on from discernment is then the ability to decide, quite naturally, to be able to choose which path to take, to actually make a decision. And sometimes when you're faced with a number of options which may seem equally attractive, or to be able to weigh up the pros and cons of them, and then with conviction and with confidence to make a decision. And it's sometimes said that these two, discern and decide, are really essential needs in human life. And if these two powers are working well, you can navigate a path through anything. When these two powers are suppressed, we get confused, we take things out of proportion, we misunderstand each other, and then the path we take then leads us to complications. One is called the power to face. And again, at this time especially, we have a lot that we need to face, whether it's outside of us or inside of us. And this was one that I thought about for a long time, especially growing up as a kid. And one of the things I realized was that the power to face has a relationship with the desires that your mind creates. And my feeling, my experience was this, that the more desires I have, if I want something from other people, because there's the potential for that desire to not be fulfilled, there's a potential for disappointment. And we're afraid of getting disappointed. And so what happens when you have a fear of being disappointed is you begin to avoid people and avoid situations. In other words, the power to face reduces the more desires you have. And I found that working on reducing these desires, and that's another whole area in itself, enabled my ability to face situations, even to face failure, to face criticism, that began to grow. And for this, it's like, one has to really understand and discover spiritual principles. And one of them, I'll just add at this point, which is very meaningful for me, is that nothing is mine. And I found that one of the most powerful sentences to live by, nothing is mine, because it means then I can lose nothing. And if I can lose nothing, that becomes the basis for my sense of security. And so that's how power to face works in my experience. And then the last one, which is a combination in a way of all of these, is the power to cooperate. And what a beautiful word, to cooperate, to operate together. And of course, one reason why people come into so much conflict with each other, whether it's in an interpersonal setting or a global setting, is we just see the differences that there are between us. But for me, cooperation starts when I realize I'm standing on common ground with another person, and that becomes the bridge to cooperate and to communicate. And so if one has spiritual strength, spiritual power, spiritual stamina, and this is how it would reflect in our relationships, in how we deal with life around us, and also how I deal with my own self and my own state of mind.
So that's a beautiful toolkit in a way of practical powers, soul powers that we can develop and work on. Power to withdraw, power to pack up, power to tolerate, to discern, power to judge, and a power to face as well. So we can really look into those and explore those, and they can save us a lot of going around the bushes and around the houses and wasting energy if we can really identify something early on and nip it in the bud, so to speak. But within all of that, there's another factor which I think can also be a huge drain on our energy, our spiritual energy, or even just in our lives generally, and that is spending a lot of thoughts worrying about what other people are thinking of me, and trying to please other people, trying to fulfill their expectations of me, and be a good whatever, father, teacher, mother, friend, or what have you. But in terms of spiritual stamina, you have got perhaps a split loyalty there to wanting to cooperate with others, but at the same time fulfilling what is right for you. How do you unhook yourself from worrying about what other people might think of how you're living your life and the decisions that you're making?
Yeah. And of course, one should try and live to the highest values one can. And for that, there needs to be almost a constant checking to see, am I kind? Am I respectful? Am I honest? Do I behave with dignity? So that internal checking, I find, should go on. But then when there is this over concern of what other people think of me, then I think that's also rooted in this desire why I want other people to like me. And it may be because there's something lacking in my relationship with myself. What I find is that what generally happens in life is people don't develop a healthy or good self-relationship. They don't take time to do that. And then we use other people as a substitute for my relationship with my own self. So I may be looking for approval, I may be looking for applause or appreciation or acknowledgement or admiration or validation. But why is the mind thirsty for that from others? It's because something maybe is missing in my relationship with myself. Have I accepted myself as I am? Do I really respect myself? And the further complication is, when your mind wants something from others, again, you may get it, you may not get it. And one of the phrases that came to me once, and it sounds a bit harsh, but I really think it's true, and it's this, that if you want something from someone, then prepare to suffer. Right? It sounds harsh, but if you're chasing after respect, attention, acknowledgement, the mind is going to race after shadows. You may get that, but then after a while, the desire just comes back again. And if you don't get it, then you feel disappointed, you feel hurt, you feel rejected. And of course, that's not a nice place to be in. So the more full I am on the inside in my self-relationship, the less will be my desire to get approval or acknowledgement from those around me. And I must say it's a journey. For me, it's a journey. It's an ongoing journey to really develop self-respect. I respect myself. I must understand myself, accept myself, and let me try and be as kind as I can to those who are around me.
I mean, stamina in relationships is one of the things that many people, they run out of steam with their relationship and they look to change their relationship, or they look to change their job because they run out of steam with their job, or the neighborhood that they're living in, or, any of these things, external things, which they look to change. And I wonder, from what you're saying, that possibly those changes, external changes, are a distraction from looking at the changes in myself that I need to make. But there does seem to be a kind of an innate desire for newness, and that newness brings new energy, and that sort of refreshes us and keeps us going. Where does that desire for newness come from? And how do you translate that in terms of a spiritual journey and a spiritual desire for newness?
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think certainly if one is authentically, when I talk about myself, if I'm really moving along and being honest with myself in my spiritual journey, I will continue to see things in a new way, which doesn't mean that things outside of me necessarily are changing, but my vision is beginning to evolve and change. So my relationship with the whole of life will begin to grow, evolve and mature if I'm doing that inner work. I think that's really where newness comes from. But if that's a little bit lacking, and sometimes that happens, then you may need newness on the outside. But then the danger is that, we can become addicted to having newness or change a lot on the outside, and not realizing that it should not be a substitute for the newness on the inside. And today, for example, in our world where we have so much choice and so much variety, it's easy to get bored with what you're doing because there's always something else. There's another channel, there's another place you can go to, you can travel, before the lockdown, of course. So we could have so much change and newness externally, which is good in a way, but it shouldn't take me away from the newness of my own inner spirit. And if I'm making that inner journey all the time, then I will appreciate the newness which comes externally, but I won't be dependent on it.
There must be an extent to which, when we are experiencing ourselves as we truly are, and within the philosophy of Raja Yoga, that is seeing ourselves as a point of light, in other words, as a soul, that is non-physical energy, that we somehow can conserve the energy that it takes when we are identifying with ourselves as a body, that takes energy from us, and that when we learn to practice this soul awareness or soul consciousness, that is a way of really tapping into my own innate energy. How does that awareness change things for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've said it very beautifully. Being in that soul conscious awareness, for me, firstly, just brings me in a state of self-respect. Just being aware of myself as that inner being of light, and just walking around through the day, at work, in the streets, just with this image of being the soul energy. And what I find is that when I'm in that soul conscious state, then when I see another human being, it helps me to see that person first as another soul, another spiritual being. And through that, it helps me to generate a good, positive feeling and a respect for the other. Because generally people see the masks that others are wearing, whether it's the mask of nationality, race, gender, and so on. But this soul-to-soul vision that whoever that other person is, but first this is also another being of energy, a being of light, it's another soul. And so it helps me to develop good relationships with everyone, because there's this sort of underlying awareness that no matter what the differences are, underneath we're all connected as spiritual beings. So it's like this, the awareness affects my attitude towards other people, and then my attitude affects how I see others, and the emotions and the behavior accordingly. So the awareness is really the root of how you live your life. And if I'm really soul conscious, then my relationship with myself, with other people and situations just goes on to this other level where I'm able to offer the best of myself to that.
And of course, we've all had the experience of feeling tired, and maybe it's time to sit and meditate and you think, gosh, I really haven't got the energy today, but you do it anyway. And then after half an hour, you feel yourself completely refreshed and reborn almost. So I wonder what it is in that experience of meditation that is refreshing and renewing us.
Yeah, well, it's like, you disengage from the noise of your five senses, apart from the noise physically around you. But when you meditate, it's like the soul is just disengaging from what you see, smell, hear, touch, etc. And because of that disengagement, you're able to experience that sense of inner peace. And normally during the day, we're so busy, engaged with life, that our soul energy is being drained. And again, in big city life, it's so important to just stop, disengage, return back to that silent space inside. And it's a refresher. It really does refresh your mind when you can do that.
So in many ways, we're talking about the soul awareness, the soul consciousness as being a form of energy that we can tap into. And once we can learn to operate from that place of being light energy, of being non-physical, of being an eternal spiritual being, that somehow releases energy for us. But what is the experience then in meditation of connecting to this divine presence, to this supreme energy, and how can we use that connection to really recharge our batteries and keep ourselves feeling that we have strength and renewed energy. How does that work?
Yeah, of course, the connection with the Supreme is the ultimate human experience. And it's also the real meaning of the word yoga, this mind connection with the Supreme Soul. What's important in terms of the relationship with the divine, with the Supreme, is this really making it into a real relationship, which is meaningful, experiential, and really fulfills the needs of the soul. And so one of the first things that we experience as we come into relationship with the Supreme is just the one who accepts me as I am, the one who does not see my weakness, the one who knows my story better than I know myself, one who understands me. And this then becomes something you carry with you through the day. And we see the Supreme very much as the true friend of the soul. You know, a friend is somebody who you trust, somebody who's very loyal to you. So it's two things. One is in meditation, when you sit and you experience that personal connection with the Supreme Soul. But then additionally, it's through the whole day. As you're walking, as you're working, you're interacting with people, you feel this presence of this Supreme Being as a friend, as a guide, or sometimes as a mother, as a father, always in the company of the Supreme. And that's really where the most power comes from. And hence sometimes it's said that this yoga connection is the highest action a human being can do. The soul to Supreme Soul connection. And when one begins to experience the love of the Supreme, that's really the game changer. Because the love of the Supreme, God's love, is such a thing, it fills your heart very quickly. And when your heart is full, then naturally the mind becomes quiet. And when the mind is quiet, then your intellect and thinking becomes very clear. And so the relationship with the Supreme is really very central to this life of the Raja Yogi. And it makes you less needy in your relationships with other people, and you have more to share. Encouragement, patience, forgiveness, understanding. So it makes you very useful to the people around you because you always have something to offer and to share.
And this becomes, in a way, your battery charger once you get it right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it takes, time to build. Like any relationship takes time to build and to mature. But that's the thing which keeps you going through anything, is your personal relationship with yourself and your personal relationship with the Supreme Soul.
And I guess at the end of the day, the experience that any human soul is truly wanting is love. Love is what nurtures us, what feeds us. And if we have love combined with peace and happiness, then these are the qualities that will sustain and support us no matter what is going on around us. And that is the secret of spiritual stamina.
Yeah, that's very true. And you mentioned love. I mean, it's the big word, but also real unselfish love. We may call that a spiritual love or pure love. And one learns also the law of pure love enables us to emerge the highest spiritual, unselfish love in our relationships with others. And one of the things you learn is the law of pure love, which is you can care, you can share, inspire, encourage, support, help, cooperate, but you cannot possess. Because when you try to possess someone or someone's behavior, then you're breaking the law of pure love. And when you break a law, there's always a penalty. And that penalty is then you lose your happiness or you lose your peace. And so it's, when one practices soul consciousness systematically in a very disciplined way, you discover the spiritual laws of life and especially the laws of relationship. And you continue to mature in your relationship with yourself, with the divine, and then also with others as well.
So what would you say in your day-to-day life is really the key thing that increases your spiritual stamina?
I would say the morning meditation is very important. And I think in big cities, it's a bit of a tragedy that people don't really experience the wonder of the early morning. You know, with 24-hour lifestyle and good lighting and the toys of technology, people tend to sleep quite late and not experience the wonder of the early morning. So the morning meditation, which is a personal time to connect with the Supreme and like download that energy into the self, followed by a time of some study of spiritual wisdom. For me, these two are like, you know, the bread and butter of a spiritual life. It sets you up for the day. It gives you that strength which is going to sustain you mentally and emotionally as you pass through the day. Just like if you've had a good breakfast, you know, then you won't sort of keep snacking through the day. So too, if you really filled yourself up with the experience of meditation in the morning and spiritual wisdom to think about, then you feel quite full as you pass through the day and dealing with people and situations.
And of course, if you put effort into creating a supportive spiritual atmosphere by meditating in a certain space and building it up, then the atmosphere will support and sustain you in return.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, you know, even in people's homes, it's important to dedicate, if not a room, at least a space or a corner, which is your meditation space, your quiet space, because you build up an atmosphere there, as you say. And then any other day, you know, when you come home from work, you may be tired, a bit stressed, you just sit there, and the vibration, the atmosphere you've built up is just going to allow you to relax and to tap into the peace which you have created in that space.
And it just takes a moment of effort, because it's very tempting when you come home tired to switch on the TV or you know, switch on something that will distract you, something on the computer that you feel is going to refresh you, but actually that is taking energy from you. Whereas what you're talking about here in those moments of meditation that you can build into your day, rather than being drained, you are being sustained.
Absolutely. And it should become like, you know, a good habit to go to that space, maybe even, you know, before you go out into the day and when you come back home, just to touch base with that, because the soul battery does need recharging. Because we live in a world where there are so many demands upon the mind, and things are pulling you in all directions. So the mind deserves some space, deserves some peace, and we should build it into our lifestyle so we're taking care of the mind better.
Well, let's have an experience of what you're talking about with taking care of our mind, with creating that space for ourselves to really feel nurtured and nourished. If you could lead us into a meditation and guide us with your own thoughts as you do that, then we can join together in that experience. Thank you.
What's quite useful if you're sitting on a chair is to have your back straight and your feet flat on the floor. Try and have your head at a natural and comfortable angle. Some people close their eyes. If you do that, then of course you need to pay attention not to fall asleep, or you can just have them half open. And so I'll just lead you through a simple guiding commentary. And this is about experiencing the state of soul consciousness. And so I just bring my attention in towards myself. And I just ask myself the question, who am I? I know that in daily life, I play many roles. I carry various labels. I wear different masks. There is more to me than these labels, these roles, and these masks. When I look in the mirror, I see the reflection of my face, my body. But there is more to me than simply this. And so I bring my attention up towards my face and up to the center of my forehead. And here I picture a star of peaceful light. Just picture this beautiful star, peaceful energy in the center of the forehead. From this star, waves of peaceful light radiate in all directions. The star of peace in the center of the forehead. This is me. This is I, the eternal soul. I am light. I am peace. I am eternal. And this peace has always been inside me. And now I choose to emerge this peace once again. All I have to do is just to be aware. I am peace. I am light. I am eternal. I am free. Just to be with this feeling for a few moments. And now, keeping this peace, I return to the awareness of the here and now.
Thank you so much, Yogesh. And a practical demonstration, I think you've got builders in the apartment or the apartment above you, but it shows you how, never mind the noises, the distractions that are happening in the world around us, because there are always going to be things in the external world that, despite whatever situation is there, you can use those powers that you talked about to withdraw, to pack up those thoughts and just turn within and get in contact with that eternal part of our being of the self, of the soul, the point of light. So we have plenty of tools in our tool bag. Thank you for sharing just a small fraction of the wisdom that you have gained over your years of exploring and practicing meditation. It's been lovely to have you on Masterclasses. Thank you, Yogesh.
Thank you so much. Thank you.